Welcome, dear students, to this class on film studies. In today's session, we'll take a look at French New Wave and Italian Neorealism, with an emphasis on holding a mirror up to society. The Neorealist movement strived to portray real-world struggles in the aftermath of Second World War, and did so to great effect. Throughout the Second World War, Benito Mussolini's government had led the nation into political and economic uncertainty, and Italy's film industry was consequently in turmoil. In an attempt to disrupt the production of propaganda, the prestigious Cinecittà film studios were severely damaged by the Allied forces, making the studio unusable for the foreseeable future. This ultimately forced Italian directors to seek alternative filmmaking practices despite having few options to choose from. Simultaneously, a group of critics writing for cinema had become gravely disillusioned by Telefone Bonacci flicks, commercial films that imitated American comedies and had no interest in the struggles of the working class. Although this frustration towards conservative escapist cinema was somewhat suppressed in print, in fact, cinema's editor in chief was the son of Mussolini himself. The popular belief that the industry was no longer creating films relevant to the public prevailed. This, along with the destruction of Cinecitta's film studios, led to a sudden shift in Italian cinematic storytelling, both in terms of filmmaking, making techniques, and the topics of discussion. These two defining factors would ultimately lead to the rise of neorealism. So, these are the two important factors behind the origin of neorealism. It tried to destroy all other isms in cinema and created a neo-realist method. With a severe lack of resources but an abundance of real world issues to address, Italian filmmakers who had previously shot traditional productions at Cinecittà film studios were now taking to the streets with minimal equipment, non-professional actors, and unbreakable belief in their socio-political purpose. The end of Second World War and the consequent end of German occupation then allowed the neorealist movement to thrive artistically, discussing socio-political issues and turmoils and real-world struggles in a way that was never possible under Mussolini's rule. Coming to the style and methods of neorealism, it actually captured the beauty of ordinary life. Open from form narrative ranges from partisan heroics to contemporary social problems. This new realism included the notion of abolishing contrived plots and professional actors, and the style was simple. Documentaries like visual style with an avoidance of special effects or unnatural lighting was avoided. The use of actual locations, especially city exteriors rather than studio sets, is another important feature of neorealism. So, these are the important points to note. On location shooting, long takes, natural light is used, medium and long shots, working class protagonist, environment served as an important actor. Environment is it's as important as the actors in that particular cinema. Poverty, crime, social injustice, the vices that you find in the society was the subject matter for these kinds of films. The key directors were Roberto Rossellini, So these are the key directors. Roberto Rossellini's Rome, Open City, won Open City. It won prizes at Cannes Film Festival. The movement gained international attention with these films. Italian neorealism's brutal, honest portrayal of the working class and their enduring struggles became known as the country's cinematic golden era, a title that it undeniably deserves. So these are the movies that came during the pinnacle of neorealism in Italy. The Bicycle Thieves, which came in 1948. Then, post war Italian governments did not approve films that portrayed Italy in a negative light. And from there on, you find the demise or decadence of neorealism in Italian films. A 1949 law strengthening production and exhibition of Italian films imposed censorship on scripts that slandered Italy. The following developed as a result: allegoric fantasy, films like Miracle in Milan, for example, melodrama films, sensu, pink neorealism, bread, love and dreams. So these are examples. So the realistic portrayals of the actual life of the people in Italy was considered as it is slander as an example for of slandering their motherland. And this no the after effects of this neorealism was long lasting because it actually opened the door to film to filming on location rather than in studio. Real life settings were encouraged later on. It showed filmmakers that movies can be used to highlight the reality of societal problems and make viewers consider social change. So that was another important contribution of neo-realistic realist films in Italy. In Asia, Africa, and Latin America in particular, it demonstrated that you could make great films inexpensively with your own country's landscape and people without lavish sets or expensive stars. So it was possible to create budget movies. The movement did not influence the French. The movement did actually influence the French New Wave, Hollywood, and as well as TV. The new wave in cinema is actually a movement which sought to stylistically and narratively differentiate itself from the dominant paradigm of mainstream film production. Usually, the people driving the movement are young and are driven by an ideological political imperative. The French New Wave is perhaps the greatest advocation for the importance of film criticism, giving the film industry a fine example of how critical analysis directly leads to the progression of the industry as a whole. Coming to the origin of this new wave, French New Wave, in 1948, Alexander Astor published The Birth of New Avant-Garde, the camera style, a manifesto outlining the power of cinema as an artistic tool. He argued that cinema could rival the creative possibilities of literature and traditional artwork, and therefore showed disdain towards the relatively new medium's commercialization. These values were passionately shared by the critics of Cahiers du Cinéma, Francois Truffaut, John Godard, Jacques Rivette, Claude Chabrol, and Eric Romer. Collectively, the group continued to explore Astro's principles and develop their own vision, which would become known as author theory. Author theory puts an emphasis on the creative direction of a creator, mirroring the way we traditionally value the vision of a singular poet or painter. The director is an artist, and as a film's author, their unique vision is to is key to the film's artistic value. The film, due to this principle, directors such as Jean Renoir, Orson Welles, and Alfred Hitchcock were seen as hugely important examples of why authorship is artistically superior to commercial adaptations and other titles that simply pander to box office expectations. However, the Cahiers writers went one step further than to simply praise established authors. Instead, they set out to utilize author theory with films of their own. Camera stylo, the cinema is quite simply becoming a means of expression. Just as all the arts have been seen before it, and in particular painting and novel, after having been a successful fairground attraction and amusement analogous to Boulevard theatre or means of preserving the images of any ride, is gradually becoming a language. By language, by language, I mean that it's a form in which and by which an artist can express his thoughts, however abstract they may be, or translate his obsessions exactly as he does in a contemporary essay or novel, in some psychological novel. That is why I would like to call this new age cinema the age of camera stylo. This is the author theory that I have told you. Author theory and the new wave. Because these films were shot by groups of friends on a low budget using newly available and cheaper cameras. Travolta defined the members as sharing nothing in common, but their rejection of the excesses of mainstream cinema is important. So these are the key directors of this period. Coming to the stylistic tendencies, they are generally disregarded or for of many of the principles of continuity editing. The films feature techniques such as jump cuts rather than eyeline matches, breaking the 180-degree rule, a heavy reliance on lighter handheld cameras rather than stage static shots, extremely long takes as opposed to the quick cuts of classical Hollywood, filmed on location rather than studio. That is very important. All of this amounts to a new style which does not attempt to conceal that the viewer is watching the film. In fact, it often seeks to actively remind them of this fact. Narrative is subservient to personal style rather than vice versa. And why is it important? Because it presented a clear alternative to Hollywood, establishing that not all films need to be made in a uniform fashion and it need not be that expensive, influenced by new waves, especially Japanese, Czech, Thai, and British, and continues to be a reference point for left wing and art cinema today, and had a theoretical underpinning which remains influential in film studies to this day. Author theory, intellectual discussion of film as a legitimate art form, thus emerged. And in India, during that point of time, something developed which is called parallel Indian cinema. The term actually refers to the new Indian wave, commonly known as art cinema or parallel cinema, somewhat similar to what we see in what we have seen in Italian cinema and French cinema. This is a genre of cinema which re-emerged after 90s as an alternative to commercial movement. The former is known for its serious content, blended with naturalism and realism, modern man dilemmas, and a constant search for self, with a keen eye on socio-political conditions. It is born out of the impetus to represent the reality in a more convincing manner. And with the passage of time and with the advent of new technological inventions, cinema gradually metamorphosed itself into an entertainment medium. However, like any other art forms, it cannot be oblivious of the social changes that take place every day. It in fact mirrors the reality. Indian cinema is no exception, and it has also reflected the social, political, and economic changes throughout its history. In the 1970s, parallel cinema movement addressed this reality without any reservation. The birth of parallel cinema in India, however, was not a sudden phenomenon. The seed was sown much before. Through this form of cinema, people could see the best of Indian cinema. It exposes us to the best of foreign cinema too. Certain literary and film studies critics created waves among the young filmmakers who were frustrated with the mindless song dance drama made in India. The main objective of this parallel cinema was to promote the laws of this promote the flow of standard art, culture, literature through media. The most common themes include modern man dilemmas, socio political scenarios, search for self, alienation, narcissism, quest for power, and so on. The canvas of characters, its high seriousness of the content, naturalism, and realistic portrayal of the characters were important. So, these are the key directors of this era. And by 1990s, we find the decline of this parallel cinema with the rising costs involved in film production and commercialization of the films had a negative impact on the art films. The fact that investment returns cannot be guaranteed made art films less popular among filmmakers as well. Under world of financing, political and economic turmoil, television and privacy proved to be the fatal threat to parallel cinema as it declined thereafter. The resurgence of parallel cinema, this parallel cinema has started being applied to offbeat films produced in Bollywood, where art films have begun experiencing a resurgence. This led to the emergence of the distinct genre known as Mumbai Noir, urban films reflecting social problems in city of Mumbai. Other modern examples of art films produced in Bollywood, which are classified as part of the